So we'll get to our speaker in just a second, but 5 Strong, for those of you, I know you might be asking, what is this? I've never been here. I've just seen maybe part of your website or heard from a friend or a neighbor. Those of you that may have been coming for a while may still be asking, what is 5 Strong? To sum it up in a very clear, concise way, 5 Strong, the origins were founded on Facebook, actually. And there was a rather large Facebook group that was centered around the mask mandates and things in school. And all of a sudden, one day, that group was gone. But the residue of that group still collected and got together and said, we need to do something about that. And the 5 Strong, the 5 pillars, there are various ways you can look at this, where there's the 5 of the groups, the pillars of the community that we want to touch and affect. That we are the 5th Congressional District in Alabama. There's different approaches to that. That really is just the belly button of what we are. We're a people. We're voters. We're citizens. We're parents, husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, who want to see effective change in the direction our country's headed, right? And that's really the core of 5 Strong. It doesn't matter where we are, who we are, or where we're coming from. We really want to have a positive effect on our community. It starts here in Huntsville. As part of that growth, our website, if you have not been to our website, I'm going to push this till the day I die, 5StrongHSV.com.
The number 5.
We're number 5, StrongHSV.com. You can sign up there, become a member. We don't, it's not, you don't have to give your blood type, at least not yet. We are looking at that. But you can become engaged there. You can find out who some of us are, when the meetings are. There's a calendar of events for things in our community, for like-minded groups, right? So that's a very good way to plug in and become engaged. As part of 5 Strong's kind of monthly calendar of events, we started RedTalks. I'm sure most of you are familiar with TED Talks online. Well, RedTalks speaks for itself. We are engaging different speakers from around the community and around our Tennessee Valley who are pertinent and relevant to the topics at hand that we're facing, right, the issues. Tonight I have the distinct privilege of introducing someone who I have grown to love as a person, as a human, and as a SME in this particular field. Actually, he's a SME across a broad spectrum of things. We need polymaths in this country, and I would consider him an ingenue polymath, if you will. Jay Young is one of the more unique personalities, one of the more unique persons I've ever met. And I knew it was that kismet. When we met, it was that kind of like, there's something different and attractive about this guy. I want to get to know him. And it's kind of a click, a male bonding thing that just happened immediately in my heart. It's a bromance. You call it that.
I feel threatened.
Bromance, totally. And in fact, Jay, I have a question on that.
Wait till later, honey.
I will. But it comes from a mechanical engineering background, which you might think, oh, that's maybe a little off kilter. Not in this town. Not in Huntsville. He has, like I said, a broad background. There's tech, there's finance, there's supply chain, manufacturing, commodities trader. I mean, he brings a broad angle of approach to every subject he tackles. And in our talks, we have coffee and different little meals and get-togethers. We attack just about every subject known to man.
And beer.
And beer, yeah, right. That helps. But it is with the utmost confidence and the utmost faith that I present to you Jay Young tonight. The topic is Bitcoin, and I am sure you will be quite impressed, and you will have questions. It will spur questions, so we'll save some time for Q&A, and then at the end, I believe we do have some time for some other topics to hit as well. Jay, take it from
Thanks so much. I'll give you this. And for the remote,
It's a touch screen. If you slide your finger across the screen, or if you wait a few minutes, that little stick that's plugged in underneath there, the light may change colors where you can
and
actually use
just
it.
go this direction. Okay.
Or I can do one of these.
Okay, perfect.
Not that many.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and I really appreciate the opener, Dave. It means a lot. Before I introduce myself, I'd like to give everyone a little bit of a couple of topics for context and hopefully impact, and plant a couple seeds in your minds if you don't mind. Back in 1933, or part of 1933, you could have purchased one of these with one of these. $20.67 could have purchased you 1 troy ounce of gold. Now, you want to purchase one of these, you need this. You need literally 100 times as much, about $2,067 to purchase one of these. That's a 99% reduction in the purchasing power of this right here. That means there's about a 1% chance in any of us actually creating dynastic wealth, intergenerational wealth, because your storehouse value has been eroded by the federal government, okay? And the security guard guy, secure this.
I got some security.
Do I have to pay? Do I have to pay you? Next slide, please. Okay, so we talked about this. Next slide, please. All right, so what I hope that I can leave all you with are 3 questions that, whether it's here or outside of here, these 3 questions that we're gonna revisit near the end of this presentation. And there is what I think one answer that answers all these questions right here. And that is, what are the air and lifeblood of the US government, which enables it to act far beyond its constitution mandated scope? What enables modern government the ability to engage in all long-term tyranny and authoritarianism? And what allows government to operate with complete impunity and a total lack of accountability to the people? All right, please keep that in your mind, and we're going to revisit that at the end. Okay, so who am I? I'm a wannabe economist, wannabe philosopher. I started with Bitcoin, got involved with it late 2012, early 2013, somewhere around there. I was fortunate enough that I was mining some Bitcoin, and I was purchasing Bitcoin back in the day. It's been a great journey. This has been a great 10 years. And I think much like you, I'm a staunch advocate for individual liberty. Disclaimers, assumptions, and requests. By the way, I don't want to take all your time, so I'm going to be speaking at New Jersey speed. I hope that's okay with everyone. All right, trust nothing that I say. Do your own research. No financial advice will be given. I'll be focusing solely on Bitcoin, no other crypto assets, okay? Full disclosure, I own some Bitcoin, some gold, and some silver. And it's just this right here, that's all. The rest of it, I lost in a boating accident. I'm assuming you have an interest in property rights, as I do. I'm assuming you have a smattering of knowledge of economics. And this PowerPoint presentation will be available afterwards if you want, in soft copy, possible, and there are some handouts later on. And for now, please keep your questions until the end, unless you just need me to repeat something that I slurred because I drank too much. Okay, here's our basic agenda. We'll talk about the scope. We'll be talking a little bit about history, okay, global human history. We'll talk a little bit about what is money, and then we'll get into the meat of this, of Bitcoin. What is it, and what's the implication of it? And finally, we'll get into some of those first 3 questions that we'll revisit, and where to from here, because I don't want the learning to stop just because you walk out the door. Okay, what's in scope, just a basic definition of what is Bitcoin, some of the fundamental attributes and functions of Bitcoin, and basic implications and applications of Bitcoin. And I think everyone here, as fellow freedom lovers, they'll all really appreciate the applications. What's out of scope is we won't be talking about how Bitcoin works. I won't be giving financial advice. We won't be talking about math or encryption, and we're not gonna be talking about the risks. That said, if you like what I talk about here today, please feel free to invite me back. I love talking about this stuff. It's fascinating, and as I very humbly asserted at the very opening slide, is the ultimate freedom accelerator. Okay, so let's set the stage for things that we're tired of. Are you tired of one set of humans, AKA government, telling another set of humans, how you should be living your lives?
Yes.
Totally.
I want an amen at the end of it. Are you tired of the Fed chairman saying that he's, quote, declaring a war on workers and, quote, he wants to get wages down? Citations in the handouts. Are you tired of civil asset forfeiture? Last time I checked, that is a violation of Fourth Amendment rights, all right? Are you tired of their politics in your money? Mm. Are you tired of being told that inflation is transient? Are you tired of feeling like your take-home pay never beats inflation?
Truth.
All right. Are you tired of endless war since 1914? And there's a specific reason why I chose that year. Many of you probably know it. Are you tired of being told the upcoming CBDCs, which can control where you spend it, how you spend it, and in the end, they can still take it away from you?
Right.
Mm.
Yes.
Are you tired of feeling like a criminal taking your money out of your bank account? Are you tired of the big five banks having special access to the treasuries and the Federal Reserve money printers? Also citations in the back. Are you tired of the country's credit ratings getting downgraded because of money mischief by the government? Moody's, Fitch, Standards & Poor's. That's not good. We have lost our AAA rating status. Are you tired of a targeted 3% rate of inflation? $1,000 over 10 years, it's only worth 75%. Over 20 years, it's only worth 55%. Over 30 years, 40%. And over 40 years, it's only worth 30%. Now, many of you have been working since your teens, I'm assuming. Many of you have had maybe $1,000 since you were 18 years old. Well, guess what? That's only worth $300 in those years, in 1983 years. That's not good. That's government extracting value out of your wallet in real time every single day. Okay. Can everyone agree this list right here probably represents 80, 90, 95% of our lives? And IC right here means industrial complex. These are various sectors where the government is involved with our lives, both intrusively and obtrusively. Government has their finger on the scale in every single one of these things. And I defy anyone to come up with 3 major sectors that are outside of this right here. That's a lot. That's humongous extra constitutional scope that none of us voted for.
That's right.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, let's go by the numbers. Peacetime numbers here. Federal debt. When I wrote this 3 months ago, it was $33 trillion. We're a stone's throw away from $34 trillion. The deficit, which is the amount of debt we add every year, $1.9 trillion. You can get this off of usdebtclock.org, okay? If we take a blended rate of all of our bonds, right, on this $33 trillion, $666 billion, 666. If we went from a near 2% to 4%, we doubled the interest rate, we would still be at historically low rates. Remember back in the 70s? 15, 16, 17, 18%. My parents had a mortgage on a house that was 15%, I think, somewhere around there, back in the day. If we went to 4%, $1.33 trillion, right? Just to service the debt. It doesn't buy us any steel, doesn't buy us infrastructure, doesn't buy us any electrons, it doesn't buy us any extra defense. This is just to keep the wolf off our buttocks. Right? Future unfunded liabilities, $193 trillion.
Goodness gracious.
Our debt to GDP ratio is 120%. Remember, these are peacetime numbers. One common proxy that we see is debt to GDP. That's okay. I think a better proxy is federal revenues, debt to federal revenues, because that's the only way that the debt can be paid off. That's at 710%. And if we take a look at global debt, all debts, divided by the GDP of the world, 250%. That means our total debts around the world are 2.5 times larger than the total economic capacity of the world. The Hirschman Financial Group did a study. They looked back 220 years to 1800, and they found 52 countries that had gone to 140% or greater debt to GDP. 51 out of 52%, or 52 of those countries went broke. 98% of those countries went broke. All right. Citations in the handout. You guys are cool with this?
Well, no, not really.
All right. So what we're seeing is this effect called NGU, number go up. This is a very pernicious psychological trick from Keynesianism. My brother over there, he knows about this. That's running the printing presses. And there are a whole slew of ways, tricks that the Federal Reserve has for running the printing presses. There are about 5 major tools that they have. It increases your paycheck so you feel good. It's a dopamine rush, right? But what's happening is it ends up decreasing your purchasing power and savings. There in the handout there's a website called WTFhappenedin1971.com, and there's chart after chart after chart that displays this. Something happened in 1971, August 15th, 1971. I wonder what that was. So can we agree that inflation is legalized theft? Can we agree that our government is broken? And can we agree that our money is broken?
100%.
Probably. All right. Have we allowed money, that ultimate tool for transmitting economic and metaphysical value, to be centrally controlled for too long? Maybe. Okay, let's talk a little bit about history. Megapolitics, and I got this term megapolitics and logical violence from this great book called The Sovereign Individual. I really recommend, if reading's your thing, I recommend you read The Sovereign Individual. I cite it in the handouts, so that'll be in there. Megapolitics are ubiquitous technological implementations that are orthogonal to or independent of politics and government, and thus change the logic of violence, which results in the destruction of the status quo of the old and rotted order and enables the establishment of a new order. Okay, so logic of violence basically has to do with that calculus that people or parties may go through in terms of the cost of committing violence versus the benefit of committing violence. If the cost is low and the benefit is high, guess what? You're probably gonna get more violence. If the cost of committing violence is high and the benefit is low, you're probably gonna get less of it. So let's pin that. Everyone here probably recognizes, I just put together a smattering of different mega political events, all right? And it's not like it's just one day you just wake up and you just have this, okay? May take decades, sometimes even centuries for things to roll through. My favorite out of all these is written language. That's how we transmit data, information, knowledge, and wisdom over space and time. Everyone kind of recognizes these, I'm sure. That's my second favorite one right there, the Gunpowder Revolution. And we're sort of in the information age, right? We are slowly entering the decentralization revolution, all right? And the reason why I really liked written language, the Gunpowder Revolution, the Gutenberg Press, is because they push power back to where it should be with everyone. It decentralizes power, and it changes the logic of violence. It makes the cost of committing violence and the benefit of committing violence completely disproportionate to me. And I think the decentralization revolution is what we are. Of all things, it started with Napster. Remember that? People were sharing music files back in 1999, 2000, right? And notice it took the music industry and the federal government years to catch up. Why? Because they are sclerotic, centralized institutions.
That's right.
governed by people who were born during the Depression. All right, so let's put a pin in megapolitics. Let's take a look back in time through history of money. And we can go all the way back to 4th century BC, and we have different monies out here, real monies, except for this one here, don't look at that. Different monies, and you'll notice they're mostly gold and silver, okay? I'm sure most of you kind of recognize the names and the countries, okay? Let's do a little bit deeper dive, a little more detail on this. This started in 1400 AD. We have a series of countries that were considered the apex predator country at the time because they had the apex predator money at the time. All of them used gold or silver. They used hard money. And I was actually really looking forward to Dave's presentation because he was going to talk about this. So I feel like I missed out. But that is so important, is the apex predator country uses the apex predator money. And on this, because it's so high level, it looks like there's a clean line of delineation. It doesn't necessarily work out like that. Let's take a deeper dive. So before we get into that, Gresham's law, bad money drives out good money. In other words, when you have currency, bad money, this right here, and it's injected into the system, people start reaching into the system and they start pulling back the good money as a storehouse of value because they always know this always goes to its intrinsic value, 0. So that's Gresham's law. A more detailed view of that previous graph, and if you can find anything like this on the web, or if you want the presentation, you're welcome to it. This is a really neat graph. Basically the same thing, but you'll notice that these little red boxes right here, during this right here, those are probably mega political events that are happening, where this country is coming along to eat that country's lunch, right? And what ends up happening is this country ends up being the old rotted order, right? They get too big for the britches, they become sclerotic, institutionalized, and they forget what got rid of the dance, and eventually this country comes along, implements good money, and they have an amazing, I'm gonna leave morality to the side for a second, an amazing period of innovation and risk-taking and expansion, right? And some would even say, in many of those cases, some of the pinnacles of the law, rule of law, right? And then it just goes to garbage after that. And you can see we're right about here, okay? So that's a look through history. Let's put a pin in that. So what is money? Some nomenclature, and Dave would have prepped the field for me before. Normally we use money and currency synonymously, okay? In this case, we're gonna separate it just for our discussion today. When we talk about money, we're saying hard money, good money, and sound money, okay? When we talk about currency, we're talking about fiat money, credit-based exchange, loose money, or bad money. So for now, let's just keep those two separate. That's a lot. This is a working definition that I came up for money. Let's break that apart. So the implementation. Money is an abstraction. It's a model implemented as a psychotechnology. Psychotechnology basically means how you think about things. Arabic numerals versus Roman numerals. They're both psychotechnology. Arabic numerals were superior psychotechnology, so we're paid to place that. Written language is psychotechnology. The double entry accounting system is psychotechnology, okay? The purpose. Whose purpose is the fulfillment of the economic coincidence of wants across time and space via an intermediating asset and can be implemented via anything tangible or intangible. That's really important. The attributes and characteristics, provided that thing has the following 9 attributes of acceptable, divisible, fungible, portable, reliable, scarce, controllable, opportunity costed, and verifiable. Out of which results in emergent functions in the order of storehouse of value, medium of exchange, and finally unit of account. And we can go into those definitions a little bit more near the end if we need to. But if it doesn't have a storehouse of value, as this gold does, it's never really gonna be money, true money. The philosophy, finally, which ultimately serves the metaphysical, financial, temporal, dimensional, and linguistic function of universal translator. Wow, okay, why is that? Because I know that if we're exchanging money for goods and services, you're expressing your highest ideal and priority, and I'm expressing my highest ideal and context, right? And that ends up being the common way in which we communicate with each other, the way we exchange value with each other, okay? Nothing in here about central parties or trust. Let's take a look at currency. A credit-based system which acts as a proxy of money, yet is incapable of exhibiting all of the qualities, attributes, characteristics, and functions of good money, i.e. storehouse of value. This does require a central party and trust. As an example, when I hold this up, most of you probably know, you hold up the light, you can see that little line in there that designates this is a $20 bill, or $100 bill, or $1 bill, right? The ink is special, right? So to the Treasury Department's credit, they do actually try to make this something that we can verify. That said, we all know that there are forgers out there, and they can make this en masse. And thus the logic of violence is violated. Okay. History, talk about some definitions. Now let's get to the meat of what we want to talk about. Before I get into what is Bitcoin, I want to kind of seed the field a little bit and talk about who owns it. And I specifically try to find people who are not directly involved in the crypto industry, because I don't want there to be any poison in the well, okay? You may recognize some of these names up here. You may not, that's okay. Suffice to say, these are titans of industry. They're leaders in their respective fields, and they have all come to the same reasonable, rational, logical conclusion that Bitcoin is for them, okay? And in many cases, it's for the companies where they work. Michael Saylor's company, MicroStrategy, owns, I think, 158,000 Bitcoin. Yeah, he's doing all right. He's doing all right. He's an extreme case, but he believes in it, and his board of directors believe in it. The officers believe in Bitcoin. With that, if you go to bitcointreasuries.net, there is a listing of publicly held companies and privately held companies that actually hold Bitcoin on their balance sheets. That's how much they believe it. They've exchanged their fiat currency, their soon to be worthless or worth less dollars, for something that has been constantly appreciating in value, perceived value at least. This next part, I'm not advocating for this, so please don't take this out of context. BlackRock study reveals optimal Bitcoin allocation portfolio is 85%. Link in the description. Do not make your portfolio 85% Bitcoin. That may be the only financial advice I'll get today. All right, but if you made your Bitcoin 0.85%, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. That may be a way to go. That's something you may want to consider. The analysis is interesting. Full disclosure, BlackRock has applied for an ETF, a Bitcoin ETF. All right, so I want to make sure everyone understands that, right? The motivation there. But I think this came out several months before. Okay, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is an intangible digital asset which has all 9 attributes and 3 functions of good money, as well as a unit of account for goods and services, which requires no central authority and utilizes a trustless methodology via cryptography, a form of math for ensuring that all trades and exchanges are cleared and accounted for accurately and promptly. As compared to Friday night, you can't get to the bank and you gotta wait till Monday morning. That's not happening. Notice there's nothing here about central parties, no trust. Another way of describing it, and I think this may have been Max Kaiser who came up with this, and I really love it, so I stole it. It's a very secure email on top of gold. It's the way to send value over the internet instantly and verifiably. Skipping the punchline, it matches the previous definition of money. I'm gonna go so far as to make this assertion, while I love what gold has done for us for 5,000 years, it is an amazing substance. If you actually understand the mechanical and chemical properties of gold, it's done a really good job for us. That said, I think Bitcoin is actually the first true form of money that we've ever had. And considering it's a psychotechnology, it actually had to be invented as compared to gold, which we get out of the ground, which again, I love. It has the purpose, qualities, attributes, characteristics, and functions, and philosophy of good money. Okay, continuing, what is Bitcoin? Some use cases, some basic applications. And as much as I can, I've tried to verify these things. I've even gone through a guided tour of the code of Bitcoin. Everyone here can actually go to a site called GitHub, GIThub.com, and you can download the code on your own. You can compile it on your own and then run that code, all right? And I'm not a programmer, I'm not a developer. I've done a little bit of that work in my past, but these guided tours are really good because I can verify line by line, character by character, what was actually in there. And that's so important, is the verifiability, right? So it is completely decentralized. As we talked about before, it is orthogonal to governmental power, governmental influence, rules, controls, ordinances, legislation, regulation. Because it's decentralized, it is global 24/7. I could send you some Bitcoin right now if I wanted to. I could send it over my phone. I'm not going to, no offense. I like it, but. All right, it is both permissionless and voluntary. You don't need to set up an account. You don't need to go to your help desk. Hey, can you set me up a Bitcoin account? There are open sources where you can just set up your own Bitcoin wallet, if you will, and you can immediately participate in that if you want to. And there's no one who can stop you from doing it either. It's also voluntary. If you want to participate, great. If you don't want to participate, that's cool too. We're good. These two right here, it is unconfiscatable and uncensorable. Because Bitcoin is code, right, it is free speech. And remember this, what happened about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, the Canadian truckers convoy? The Canadian truckers were asking, hey, please send us money. We need help. We need gasoline, we need diesel, we need food, we need some blankets, all right? We need just logistical support. And people were sending money through, what was that major site? GoFundMe, that's right, you got it. Well, guess what Trudeau did? Nope, that's right, you shot it down. Nope, you're not doing that. Why? A centralized government got in the way with a centralized institution. So they said, okay, fine. You won't send us dollars or Canadian dollars, send us Bitcoin and send it through one of the exchanges, Kraken or Gemini, whatever. Here it comes again. Nope. Went to the exchanges, Trudeau went to the exchanges. No, you may not allow the Canadian truckers convoy to access the accounts in the exchanges. Okay, they flipped them the flying finger of friendship and they said, fine, don't send us dollars, don't send us Canadian dollars, don't send us Bitcoin to the exchanges, send us Bitcoin directly. And that's exactly what happened. And there's video on YouTube where people are going around with a slip of paper, has a QR code, says, hey, here's your Bitcoin, man. Have a great day. And that's it. That's it. It could not be confiscated. It could not be censored. It could not be stopped. It is orthogonal to governmental power. The supply is capped at 21 million. We're going to get to that, a chart that shows that. And if you want, we can go into a little more detail about that 21 million. I know that seemed like that's not enough. You'll be surprised. It is. And it has programmatic inflation rate, right? No politician is sitting there with the dials and levers and buttons of power and influence. There are no power brokers doing this sort of thing. And the inflation rate is cut in half every 4 years until the year 2140. It is programmatic, it is automatic. It is politically neutral and it cannot be weaponized. While we probably don't agree with Putin invading Ukraine, right? That doesn't necessarily mean we also agree with the way the United States handled that invasion. And what was the first thing, one of the first things they did, the United States did? Cut Russia off from SWIFT. Well, that sounds all well and good until you realize, oh, they can't pay for the debts they have with us. We shot ourselves in the own foot in doing that. And by the way, the United States government didn't shoot itself in the foot. The United States government shot you folks in the
That's
foot.
right.
Because it's your companies and your businesses, right? And even if it's not a business that you own, you probably have money with those institutions, okay? So they really jammed you up on that. This is the chart I want to talk about. All right, so time represented in the number of blocks that are added to the blockchain. And if you folks are interested in learning about blockchain technology, I have a presentation for that. But basically, this is blocks, but you can think of this as time over here. And this orange line going down and to the right is the inflation rate. Yes, it started out pretty high, but that's because it was at the very beginning. You only had 50 blocks in the blockchain and you added 50 blocks. Yes, it's 100%. But every 4 years, every time you see that step down, that's a reduction by 50% of the inflation rate. All right. Right now, we are, I think right in here, where the inflation rate is 1.8%. We get more than that in 1 month sometimes, right? In some places, they're getting that in a week. Nazi Germany, the Weimar Republic, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, sometimes they're getting that in a day, right? 1.8%. And this will continue to go down and down and down and down. Conversely, this right here, the blue line up and to the right, this is the supply of Bitcoin that has been added to the system because of miners adding more Bitcoin to the network. But you'll see it bends downward, right? And it's flattening off right here. So we're right around here. Around April 21st of 2024 is when we're gonna hit that bump, and it's gonna go down to 0.9% rate of inflation. How many people would give good money to see a politician deliberately cut the rate of inflation by half because it's the right thing to do? My point with this, I'm sure you folks all kind of get now, it's programmatic. It is completely out of the hands of a politician. It's completely out of the hands of JP Morgan Chase Bank, of Wells Fargo, and Bank of America, and Powell, and their maestro. It's no longer about the humans, it's about people following the rules together, choosing to voluntarily. Okay, implications. What does this mean? Bitcoin is the embodiment of the American ideal of liberty. It is the new world. 1492 was the beginning of the trend of the rest of the world moving here to find liberty. That was a movement in space because it put them out of reach of the old governments. Bitcoin is that movement towards liberty in a completely different realm because it begins to move us out of reach of government. It's the ultimate escape hatch. Those brave individuals leaving their homelands was an act of defiance. I will not participate. Moving to Bitcoin is also an act of defiance. I will not participate in this. As the Constitution intended, it gets government out of the way. Fiat currency is a destabilizing force because it forces us to think solely of today. I know tomorrow this is going to be worth less, so I better spend it now or next week or next month and forget the future. Hard money is a civilizing force because it motivates us to think and invest in the future. An example of this, which I really like in a book called The Bitcoin Standard, was Notre Dame, the cathedral. That has been around since, what, the 14th century, I think? Talk about long-term thinking, and that came about during a time when Europe was readily moving towards a hard money standard. Boy, talk about thinking in the future. That's forward thinking. Bitcoin is not a hedge against inflation. It is the solution to inflation. We hear a lot of people say, oh, Bitcoin's a hedge, it's a hedge, it's a hedge. This is a hedge, and I really like gold. Bitcoin is the solution to inflation. It gets the artificiality or the contrivance out of the market, right? Because the inflation rate is programmatic. and the rules are all the same. We can all choose to participate in them, and we choose not to participate in that rule, or that set of rules. The network says, great, you play over there with your set of rules, we're gonna play over here with our set of rules. Okay, those first 3 questions that I asked at the very beginning. If I could go around, anyone have any answers they'd like to proffer or suggest?
Currency. Fiat currency.
Okay. Anyone else? You all agree? I agree with you. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. The U.S. Constitution is based on this one principle, which I can describe in one sentence, 3 words: rules, not rulers. Yes? And does this by way of the abolition of absolute power, which we all know what that does. It is to separate the different powers, and the best they could, and I think the Constitution is the greatest document ever created, or the second next to the Declaration of Independence. It did so by trying, even within the federal government, trying to decentralize power. What an amazing concept. They were so far ahead of their time, and these are very learned, very intelligent, cogent individuals. Where to from here? Bitcoin is not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's not a once-in-a-generation opportunity. A bold statement by me is this is a once-in-a-species opportunity. Yes, I said it. But don't be fooled. This is going to be a hard journey. Whether we're talking about the journey to learn what it is, to get involved with Bitcoin, if that's what you want to do. And we know government is not going to go kindly into that good night. They're going to fight back very hard against being kicked out, by being defunded. Yes, we know that's going to happen. And expecting anything less is foolish. But if you're looking for truth, individual responsibility, and individual liberty, then this is for you. Okay, where to from here? Dave, my good friend, is handing out some handouts for everyone. And I want to make sure that the learning doesn't stop the minute you walk out the door. I want you to have as many tools and opportunities for learning as you can as soon as you walk outside. So your best personal consultant is this guy right here, right? And my contact information there. All of you are welcome to reach out to me anytime. I'm not saying I'm not going to answer the phone, but you can reach out to me, right? Also, I recommend, if you know meetup.com, that's a great website where people with similar interests can get together, whether it be in person or virtually. And it could be for a variety of things. It could be around dogs, it could be around sewing, it could be about politics. I have a meetup on Bitcoin and other crypto assets called Bitcoin, Huntsville, Crypto, and Coffee. I recommend everyone consider joining it. It doesn't cost you anything. I run this on my own, and we run every 4th Saturday, try to run every 4th Saturday from 11 to 1, and it's online, so you don't have to travel anywhere. We have people as far south as Auburn. We have some people as far north as Pennsylvania coming, and it's been really nice. It's been a good exchange of ideas, a good exchange of information, if you will. Quick question, yeah.
Did you say that meetup was
First page.
when?
Sure. So I try to do it every 4th Saturday of the month from 11 to 1. 11 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Oh.
All right, so what's in there? Motivators, doing your own research, continuing education, key figures, tools, action items. Should I get Bitcoin? How can I get Bitcoin? And how can Bitcoin be used? What are the use cases? What are the applications of it? Okay. And you'll notice I put in there websites, QR codes, because nobody wants to type in URLs anymore. That's not so fun. If you really want to learn about this, and I hope everyone here does, okay, I do have one thing: you got to do the work. And unfortunately, I'm having to contend with several decades of indoctrination that we've all faced in learning about the fiat money system, right? And I'm willing to bet, I am putting myself in this list as well, I bet you there's not a single person in this entire room who would explain how the fiat money system works. When I mean that, the M0 money supply, the M1 money supply, the M2 money supply, the M3 money supply, the euro dollar system, the petrodollar system, money market funds, bonds. Nobody can explain it because it's credit on top of credit on top of credit. Okay, it is really convoluted. That said, if this sort of thing you're interested in, I ask you, please spend 10 hours to learn what Bitcoin is, another 10 hours to learn how Bitcoin works, and then another 10 hours to learn where Bitcoin is used. I know I'm asking a lot, but compared to 30, 40, 50 years of indoctrination, I think it's a small price to pay. Okay, I can tell you from a person who I've done the work, from other people I know who've done the work, and people who I know who didn't do the work, but then they did, every single person who's actually done the work, 100% of the time, they are red pilled. In Bitcoin, red pilled. In the Bitcoin community, we would say they're orange pilled. All right. 100% of the people who actually do good faith research, who do the work, and actually go to good faith sources are orange pilled. Okay, Q&A. I will stay here in this room as long as you want. If the room closes, I will stand in the parking lot as long as you want, because I know there are probably tons of questions. And I will happily come back to talk about more of this. I've given a presentation on how, what is blockchain, right? I've given a more detailed explanation or presentation on Bitcoin, right? There are other topics. Dave and I have talked about this before. There's an interesting one, if anyone's interested in this Silicon Valley Bank debacle, which is a result of, say it with me, fiat currency, right? How that blew up. And there was Silicon Valley, Signature Bank, and there was the third one, starts with an S as well. Fiat currencies, they give government way too much control in our lives, okay? So with that, I'd like to open up the floor, and thank you for your time. Please, please.
I'm in education,
Yeah.
and a lot of times schools and will do classes like, they'll do like a simulation, like Monopoly or like Life.
Yeah.
Is there something where you could do that with Bitcoin specifically?
So yes, if you know how the rules are on the inside of the Monopoly cover, there's one line in there that says the bank never runs out of money. If the bank runs out of money, just take some little slips of paper and just put them in there. Cross that line out.
I don't understand.
But because Bitcoin is capped at 21 million, right? The ultimate cap is 21 million. And once that's done, then there will be no more Bitcoin produced. What gives government the power, and this gentleman said it, I think accurately, real power, right, is the ability to ramp up the amount of money that they, or currency, value that they're extracting out of your wallet, yes? And so that rule of monopoly actually enforces the idea, that's the indoctrination I'm talking about, right? Is the bank never runs out of money. Janet Yellen said it. She said, we're never gonna go bankrupt. Why? Because we can just print our way out of it. And there's a term for that in economics, the monetization of our debt. Get rid of that. You could have a slight modification. The bank may only print $500 every full round. That would be a controlled, programmatic way of doing things. I hope I'm making an impact. But just right off the bat, get rid of that rule.
I'm confused. What is hard money or sound money versus fiat? What is that principle? Because I hear these terms and I think, what's the difference? What a dollar bill, it's still something I can use to go down the store and buy something. Why is it more defenseless than the yak stones from Yap Island or whatever.
Thank you for that softball. I'll give you your $20 later. It's gonna be $20 bill. It'll be good. So that's a good question. It's funny, I get so far down the rabbit hole, it's hard for me to come back up sometimes. Okay, so remember I talked about the 9 attributes: acceptable, divisible, fungible, portable, reliable, scarce, controllable, opportunity costed, and verifiable. Opportunity costed and verifiable are, I think, what separates fiat money from hard money. In other words, forgers can go out and they can forge this, right? Prior to some of the holograms were put in there, and some of the advanced printing techniques and the threads that they put in there, it was pretty easy to do. Go watch Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio, right? Excuse me, I'm going to do my best Marco Rubio impression. All right. Whereas this, this right here, that's my my laugh track over here. This right here, at a minimum, they have those special guns, those X-ray guns. If you ever purchased precious metals before, they have those special guns where you can actually do a mass spectral analysis of this material right here. And because it's thin, it would be difficult to hide lead in this. So it's difficult to forge this because you would actually have to get down to the atomic level and start adding protons to the nucleus, right? So this is highly verifiable, and while this is somewhat verifiable, it's not nearly as verifiable as this if you have the right equipment. This is opportunity costed. It takes work. In other words, miners and those who end up purifying this sort of thing, doing the assays and creating these products, they have to make a choice. Do I take my money and continue to purify gold and make these products, or do I take my money and go do something else, right? I'm gonna go into the restaurant business. I'm gonna go into the aerospace industry, right? They have to make that choice every single day. It is an opportunity cost associated with that. And that is why I think opportunity cost is so important. What is the opportunity cost for this? The paper is about 4 cents, right? Your operational costs. Your CapEx, OpEx is about 4 cents. This is the physical paper. What about the electronic ledger? What's the cost on that? It's 0. That's why I focus so much on opportunity costed and verifiable. And by the way, verifiable doesn't apply to this on the electronic ledgers, right? Who's gonna verify, oh no, you don't get to put that on your ledger. And that's, by the way, one of the 5 tools the Federal Reserve has at its disposal, is they can arbitrarily put money into the big 5 banks' accounts with the Federal Reserve.
That's right.
I hope I was helpful. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what is CBDC?
Okay, good question. Central Bank Digital Currency. This is their attempt to try, I'm giving my bias right now. This is their attempt to try to come up with crypto, everything crypto. I've got crypto this, crypto cats, and crypto monkey apes and all that stuff, right? This is their attempt to get on the bandwagon and create something crypto, right? So it sounds really good. Oh, it's crypto, it must be good, right? But if you really look at how this works under the hood, it gives them the ability to control where you spend the money, how you spend the money, when you can spend the money, on what you can spend the money, and it also gives them the ability to take the money right out of your bank account if you're not spending it fast enough. Think about that for a
And
second.
who's they?
I'm sorry.
Who's they?
The centralized governments.
The man. Worldwide. Is this like?
So, okay, so that's a good clarification question. I'm sorry for not being more clear about that. Every central bank loves the idea of central bank digital currencies. So they may be fungible with each other, interchangeable with their currencies with each other. Bank of Japan, People's Bank of China, European Central Bank, Federal Reserve, blah, 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 right? But in terms, so that's at the what they call wholesale level, right? So they may have balancing the ledger because of international trade, right? But in terms of what we get to do at the retail level, they want to be able to ramp up or ramp back this, that, and the other thing. And if you really think about it, so I think we can all see that's pernicious, that's really insidious, right? The fact that it's control. But there's one layer that's below that, it's called quantum mechanics, in the sense that there's the cost of money, called interest. And because they can ramp up or pull back on the spending, which is what they're trying to do, to answer your question before, around if you don't spend it fast enough, we're just gonna take it from you, right? Is they're trying to juke the numbers, right? Saying, oh, well, of course our spend is great. Yeah, because I had to. I can't save my money for CapEx. I cannot invest in the future, right? How many people here, you don't have to raise your hands, but how many people here have saved their money because they wanted to invest in some sort of capital, whether it be a car, a house, a business, stocks, right? Because when you buy a stock, you're buying into that company. You are a legitimate part owner. It's equity position, right? Or even if you did it, not on the public stock exchange, but you bought partial ownership of a company, right? That's what that is. And so by having CBDCs, the government is taking away your ability to do what's in you, for you to do what's in your best interest by saying, I know there's an opportunity over there, and I'm gonna hold off on spending. You're choosing to take the opportunity cost of not spending today because you want to invest in the future. That right there. That's why fiat currencies are so destabilizing, because like the CBDCs is like the ultimate in fiat currency, right? Is they force us to think of today and never doubt tomorrow. Yes, please.
You can't pass it on to your children, and they're gonna make it expire. So you can't save money in any way, shape, or form. It's total control.
Yeah.
For people my age, there's tons of YouTube videos. They're on Twitter. There's all kinds of things where they're talking about and explaining it to you in really, really simple terms, because they're enforcing this currently in the European Union.
Yes.
And Canada announced today, Trudeau went out, I saw this on Twitter before I came, he brought in all the governors of the provinces of Canada and told them that if they don't get their people on the CBDC, that they would be unable to get medical care. He was gonna freeze all medical care in all of Canada if they don't agree to force their people onto CBDC. And you can look that up, I saw it today on Twitter, so I'm sure.
If you thought March of 2020 to today was bad in regards to not being able to get hospital care or medical care because someone didn't get the poke, this is literally orders of magnitudes worse, because this has to do with all those sectors of our lives, that grid that I showed you before. That covers 95% of our lives, and they're going to control every bit of it. Sir?
Should the internet be blocked
Yep.
or breached,
Yep.
how is value realized?
So let's go through that for a second. Let's just say the internet is blocked, and we've seen a real-time example of this with Iran, where I believe it was whoever's, what was the mullahs, where they basically shut down the internet right there, and they said, nope, no more. I think within 1 or 2 years, they got so much pushback, they had to uncork it, because they, like all of us, had gotten so intertwined with their operations over the internet that they are incapable of operating without the internet. So they could shut it down, it just didn't work. Another example is China in, I think 2021, they mandated no more crypto assets. You may not mine, you may not own, you may not exchange in crypto assets. And little technical, the hash rate for the Bitcoin mining network have been going up and up steadily, and it took a really serious nosedive. 6 months later, and the reason why is because there were miners in China because they were able to get very inexpensive electricity, okay? 6 months later, it was right back to where it left off, because like a virus, all those miners picked up, they went to Kazakhstan, the energy really cheap over there. They went to Indonesia, they went to Malaysia, they went to Southeast Asia, right? Some came to the United States, right? Some are in Texas. And my point with that is they found a way. So they try to stop it at the internet level, okay? Yet it didn't have any effect. So first off, the only way that could happen, in my humble opinion, is if all the governments colluded and they said, "Oh, we're shutting down." Well, I don't think that will happen. The reason why, we already have one country, El Salvador, that has made it an official currency, right? You're required to take Bitcoin if someone wants to pay in Bitcoin. There are other countries where it is legal tender. You're allowed to exchange in Bitcoin. Some countries are actually taking payments, tax payments in Bitcoin, okay? So it is slowly infiltrating. The final thing I want to say about this is, because this is a very good question, and it's a good faith question. If we shut down the internet, what happens to the finance and what happens to the supply chain? Does anyone really think Bitcoin's gonna be at the top of my mind? And by the way, my Bitcoin is in a wallet, right? It's what we call a hardware wallet, all right? It's secure. Much like this right here, if they shut down the internet, I still have this, and I still have my Bitcoin. I still have my storehouse of value. Does that make sense for everyone, right? So if governments, let me give the analogy. If I have a tick that's right here, and I want to get rid of it, I don't think I'm going to take a 44 Magnum to get rid of that tick, right? And that's exactly what shutting down the internet is going to do. I hope that's okay.
Well, but the bottom line is, without social or political pressure to put it back into our hands, it is internet dependent.
Not necessarily. There are ways of transmitting Bitcoin phone to phone, device to device. And there are other ways of doing it through what we call second layer. I apologize for getting a little technical here. A second layer on top of Bitcoin called the Lightning Network, okay? And that is a way for people to exchange value. They still use Bitcoin, but it's a second layer, and it can go between device and device. I apologize, that's very abstract.
Can you buy a car with Bitcoin?
Yes, you can. I hope in the handouts I cover this a little bit. So there's a company called Strike, and Jack Mallers, he's out of Chicago, he's a young guy, I think he's only 30 years old, he's a genius. And he's been working closely with, I believe, the El Salvadorian government to try to make Bitcoin more common there. And what he did, and it was a stroke of genius, where he was working with, I think, the major credit card companies, and basically piggybacking off of, I think it was Visa or MasterCard's network. And if you do that, you get 43 million vendors automatically, okay? And what he and his company are doing is they're using the Lightning Network to move value across the internet using Bitcoin. And here's the really cool part about it. If, let's say you're a vendor and I'm just Joe Blow, okay? I want to buy a cup of coffee from you. I can pay in Bitcoin, I can pay in dollars. And you want to take payment, you can take payment in Bitcoin, or you can take payment in dollars. From your point of view, it's completely opaque. You don't care what I'm paying in, you know you're going to get paid in dollars. And from my point of view, it's opaque, and I know I can pay Bitcoin. And Strike does the conversion on the back end, and they move the money through the Lightning Network. It's instantaneous. And if you look on YouTube or whatever you want to use, there are real-time examples of people paying for stuff in the same amount of time with a Strike card that they do with their Visa. There was a really cool example where I saw someone do this over a webcam. Someone held up the phone with a QR code as an invoice, and the person on the other side sent them $5 as a demonstration, just because they held up the QR code to the webcam, and the other person was able to read that on their screen. So I apologize, it's a little abstracted, but the point is, the infrastructure and the plumbing is being built, and there's more coming out every single week.
How do you mine Bitcoin, and what's it got to do with the price of electricity? Why does cheap electricity make it possible to mine Bitcoin?
Okay. How much time do you have?
Just give me the idiots.
Okay.
Bitcoin for dummies, Bitcoin mining for dummies, okay? I mean, this big.
You don't strike me as a dummy if you're asking that question. So, it's gonna take a minute. Okay, with specialized equipment, all right, called ASICs, Application Specific Integrated Chip, you have these rigs that are like the size of that mop bucket over there. About the size of this right here. What they do is they solve mathematical equations. The best analogy I can give you is if this room had an inch of hay in here, and there was a golden needle in there, and we all are manually picking through and finding that needle, all right? The opportunity cost and the effort to go through and do that is the miner expending energy, electricity, to solve those mathematical equations. And the reward is that golden pin that someone in here is gonna find, okay? And we all do it together, and we all agree, we all see, what's your name, please? John found the golden needle. We can all verify John found the golden needle, and we have what's known as an open ledger, public distributed ledger, and we can all agree John found the golden needle, so he gets the credit for that, or he gets the golden needle, if you will. So it's the solving of mathematical equations, and in a way, you finding that golden needle in this room with an inch full of hay is chance. And the whole point of why the creator of Bitcoin did this, this person or party tried to make the finding of that golden needle as non-determinate or random as possible, like winning the lottery. So you have all these miners, hundreds of thousands of miners around the world who are trying to win the lottery, if that makes sense. Okay, and they use math as the methodology for ensuring that it's distributed as much as possible, all right? And it's a function of the amount of computing power they bring to the table, if you will. That was the first part of your question. What was the second part, about electricity?
Yeah, I mean, well, now that links into it, because my question is, number one, how do you, I mean, you can't dig holes in a computer looking for gold inside.
That's right.
Well, you can, I suppose, because it's but a lot of work. My other question is, and then you sort of explained it as an adjunct to it, because obviously if you're going to use a lot of compute power and you're going to run it continuously, you're going to suck up a lot of juice.
So,
and if you're in Huntsville Utility is going to bill you right out of the building.
That's a very good question, and you're bringing up a good point. So this is one of the reasons why I love Bitcoin so much, is because the network nature and the decentralized nature of this, the miners are always looking for the lower and lower point of cost of electricity. Anybody ever hear of flare gas? Anyone here from Texas?
Oh, the gas that gets flared off on the oil wells.
You got it. The methane that comes out, it's better, or environmentally conscious, that you burn that methane to convert it to water and CO2 than to let it stay as methane and have a damaging effect on the atmosphere. If you go in some of these oil derricks throughout Texas, they're just burning all over the place. And the reason why they just do that is because it would cost more for the capital equipment and the OpEx to take it back to a central point and then take it to the Henry Hub station to trade. So just burn it. Well, there's so much energy in there that some miners have actually used their fiat currency for CapEx, and they've developed special turbines, gas turbines, that run off the flare gas, that run electric generators, that then power those shipping containers full of miners. So they have actually increased the total usable energy in the world. And for the most part, their OpEx is just people maintaining the equipment, right? Their CapEx was heavy on the front end and pretty light on the back end, right? So that's one example. There are other examples of people going to remote locations where there are hydroelectric power, right? My point with this is that the Bitcoin network is always searching out places where they can get electricity for 5 cents, 4 cents, 3 cents per kilowatt hour. That's an amazing thing, because what are we paying, 11 cents here, right?
Yeah.
No one runs a mining rig, not mining operation here in this area. They go out to these locations. So Bitcoin is actually creating usable energy in the world. I know that sounds a little strange.
For about 4 more years. Because
Well-
they're up to 20 million Bitcoin already, so.
No, until 2140.
Well, they've only got about 1 million more to go.
Yes, but the point is that
Very good
because remember, the inflation rate keeps getting cut in half,
Yeah.
that the last Satoshi, that last teeny tiny little bit of a Bitcoin will actually be mined in 2140, but there's another part of this. So when you mine, you create what's a block of data, right? So there's transactions that are cleared. Dave and I do a transaction, Beck and I do a transaction, and those transactions get put in there, and the miner takes that, wraps it up, and adds it to the blockchain. There are 2 reasons why the miner would do that. It's money, right? But the first part is the very first line on that block has what's known as a subsidy or a coin-based transaction, and they get rewarded with 6.5 Bitcoin right now. Every one of these these blocks, they get 6.5 Bitcoin. On top of that, they also get a fee for all those transactions that are in there. They could take a tiny little bit. It may only be a few Satoshis, or a fraction of Bitcoin, but it adds up because they're doing 2,000 or 3,000 transactions every 10 minutes. Okay, those transactions, the fees that the miners get, comes to about 2 to 3 Bitcoin per block. So right now, they're getting about 9 Bitcoin. And in the next one, they'll get about 6 Bitcoin. So even when the last Bitcoin is actually mined in 2140, they still have the incentive because they're clearing transactions, and they'll probably get about 2 to 3 Bitcoin, per block. Hope that makes sense. I know it's very abstracted. All right, I feel like I don't want to
Yeah, you're getting the hook. That's
getting
the
the
hook.
One more
One
question?
more
I
question.
had one more question, and that is, all the rest of the cryptocurrencies. What's the advantage of Bitcoin over all the rest of them?
I get this a lot. Bitcoin is money, okay? All the others are central. So Bitcoin is decentralized and trustless, all right? And it's money. So it has those 3 things going for it, which is good. All the others are not decentralized, and they require trust, right? And they are trying to do other things like smart contracts. So if you've heard about Ethereum, that is something that's one of the major crypto assets out there is Ethereum. There are other ecologies, other systems out there that are trying to do smart contracts. Some are trying to be integrators between smart contracts, okay? My advice, if you're asking for advice, my advice is stay away for now. If Bitcoin, as odd as it sounds, Bitcoin's the simplest out of all of them. Bitcoin's the simplest, but once you kind of get your head wrapped around it, it's actually not that hard. If you can understand Bitcoin, you can probably understand the others. But if you don't understand Bitcoin, you're probably not going to understand the others, right? So I hope that's helpful for now. Stay away from them, okay? I just, full disclosure, I do have stakes in those others, okay? But I'd like to think I did my research.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. For talking with us. All right, who here this is their first time here tonight? 1, 2, 3.
Here?
3.
My
Okay,
first time,
great.
yeah.
Welcome. It's good to see new people, as David mentioned before. I am Sandy Stevens.